Caribbean Sea, 87 nautical miles north of Caracas, 0417 local time. Dawn hasn't broken yet. The water is black glass reflecting scattered stars. At 340 feet below the surface, a 53-year-old German submarine makes the quietest sound in the ocean, a hydraulic whisper as Torpedo tube doors cycle open. Inside the Sábalo, 64 Venezuelan sailors believe they're about to change history. They believe they're invisible. They believe surprise and audacity will overcome technological disadvantage. They believe that desperation, when channeled properly, can defeat overwhelming power. They have no idea that history was already written 6 days ago by analysts in Norfolk, Virginia, who knew this moment was coming before the submarine even cleared Venezuelan territorial waters. The target sits on the horizon like a floating city. The USS Gerald R. Ford, 100,000 tons of American power projection, 75 aircraft, a crew of 4,500, a price tag of $13 billion. Nuclear reactors that could run for 20 years without refueling. Electromagnetic catapults that can launch a fighter jet every 45 seconds. Radar systems that track objects the size of baseballs at 200 miles. To Captain Eduardo Mendoza, staring through his periscope at the distant silhouette, it looks like the ultimate political statement. One torpedo, one carrier, one moment that would force the world to take Venezuela seriously again. To the 3 Virginia-class submarines trailing him at 2,000 yards. It looks like a math problem with only one solution. Here's what makes this situation fascinating, not the engagement itself, but everything that led to it. The slow-motion collapse of a submarine force that once commanded respect throughout the Caribbean. Venezuela's underwater fleet didn't die overnight. It rotted slowly, like fruit left in tropical sun. For German-built Type 209 submarines purchased in 1976. Back when Venezuelan oil money could buy anything. Genuine blue water ambitions. A navy that patrolled from Trinidad to Panama. Boats that made American planners nervous during Cold War scenarios. Today, 3 of those submarines sit in La Guaira Naval Base as cannibalized hulks. The Caribbean hasn't moved since 2014, its diesel engine seized from saltwater corrosion. The Carride lost its propeller shaft in 2017 during a training exercise gone wrong. The Tarantula is missing its entire combat information center, stripped for parts to keep the other boats operational. Sailors joke darkly that between all 4 submarines, Venezuela has enough working components for maybe 1.5 functional boats. And that's being generous. The Sábalo is the survivor. Barely. Its diesel engines haven't been properly overhauled in 9 years. Its sonar suite uses vacuum tubes that were obsolete when Ronald Reagan was president. The fire control computer runs on software that predates the iPhone. The periscope optics have been repaired so many times that the image is perpetually fuzzy, like looking through a dirty aquarium. Venezuelan naval officers haven't conducted a live torpedo exercise in over a decade. Not because they don't want to, because they can't afford to recover the practice weapons afterward. Each training shot costs $400,000 they don't have. So they train with simulations on computers from the 1990s and hope muscle memory bridges the gap. But here's the thing about desperate men commanding dying machines: they don't calculate odds the way rational planners do. A regime facing international isolation, economic collapse, and internal dissent sees opportunity where professionals see suicide. Desperation follows its own terrible logic. 6 days earlier, La Guaira Naval Base. The mission briefing lasted 40 minutes. Captain Mendoza stood before his crew in a cramped briefing room that smelled of mildew and diesel. The overhead projector flickered, casting shadows across faces that ranged from eager to terrified. The objective was simple on paper: shadow the American carrier strike group operating in international waters. Demonstrate Venezuelan sovereignty. Assert presence. Force the Americans to acknowledge that these waters weren't theirs alone. What went unsaid was louder: trail the fort close enough to simulate a torpedo attack. Gather targeting data. Prove capability. Don't actually fire unless absolutely necessary. Create a crisis that gives Maduro negotiating leverage. Mendoza knew his boat. He knew its limitations. He knew that simulating and executing were separated by a single decision made under pressure in dark water. He also knew that refusing orders meant ending his career and possibly his freedom. At 1,430 hours, The Sábalo slipped from its berth and submerged. 64 men descended into mechanical uncertainty, trusting that equipment designed for Cold War theaters could handle one more mission. Within 17 minutes, 14 separate American sensor systems had logged its acoustic signature. The Caribbean isn't just water. It's the most surveilled body of ocean on the planet outside the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. Every square mile between Venezuela and Florida is wired with SOSUS, sound surveillance system, underwater microphones planted during the 1960s to track Soviet submarines approaching American coastlines. These passive listening arrays have been upgraded continuously for 5 decades. They detect everything: whale migrations traveling thousands of miles, shrimp colonies clicking their claws in coordinated swarms. The thermocline layers where warm and cold water meet and create acoustic shadows. And definitely a Type 209 submarine running on diesel engines designed before the internet existed. When the Sábalo departed La Guaira, 17 different sensor nodes logged its acoustic signature before it traveled 50 meters. American intelligence analysts in windowless rooms cataloged every sound, the specific frequency of its propeller blades, the harmonic vibration of its drive shaft, the rhythmic thump of its cooling pumps. They knew the crew roster. They knew fuel load. They knew the captain's name, his wife's name, his children's school schedule. They knew the submarine's maximum underwater endurance down to the hour. They knew which valves leaked, which systems ran hot, which crewmen had reported sick during the previous patrol. The Venezuelans believed they were ghosts slipping through dark water. They were performers on a stage where every seat was filled by American analysts taking notes. Day 3, 140 nautical miles north of Venezuelan coast. The Sábalo made good time. Mendoza kept his boat at periscope depth during daylight, running on batteries, minimizing noise. At night, he surfaced to snorkel, drawing air into the diesels to recharge batteries and refresh the boat's atmosphere. Standard procedure for diesel-electric submarines operating beyond coastal waters. Each time he surfaced, American satellites photographed him from orbit. Each time he submerged, underwater arrays tracked his descent. Each time he changed course, analysts updated their projections. The Ford Carrier Strike Group was conducting routine operations 200 miles to the north. Flight operations, training exercises, freedom of navigation transit. The battle group consisted of the carrier, 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, and, unknown to Mendoza, 3 Virginia-class attack submarines running silent ahead of the formation. The USS Mississippi, USS Indiana, and USS Delaware, each one a technological marvel that made the Sábalo look like a museum exhibit. Nuclear-powered, capable of staying submerged for months. Acoustic signatures so minimal that marine biologists have documented whales bumping into them. Sonar suites that could hear a wrench dropped on a deck plate at 40 miles. They've been tracking Mendoza since day 1, maintaining position 2,000 yards behind and below, matching his every maneuver. He had no idea they were there. His sonar was designed to detect Soviet submarines in the Baltic Sea during the 1970s. It couldn't hear Virginia-class boats even if they deliberately announced their presence. Day 6, 0300 hours. Mendoza brought the Sábalo to periscope depth. The Ford was visible on the horizon, lit up like a city. He could make out individual aircraft on the flight deck, could see the glow of the island superstructure, could count the destroyer escorts maintaining station around her. Inside the cramped control room, his executive officer plotted firing solutions on outdated charts. The sonar operator strained to hear threats through headphones connected to sensors that should have been replaced during the Clinton administration. The weapons officer verified torpedo readiness on equipment that predated his birth. They were 18 nautical miles from the carrier, well within range of their SUT heavyweight torpedoes. Close enough to create an international incident. Close enough to prove capability. Far enough that they believed they could fire and escape. Mendoza's orders from Naval Command were clear: demonstrate capability. Don't engage unless American forces open fire first. But orders written in comfortable offices by men who'd never smelled diesel and sweat in a submarine's atmosphere carry different weight when you're staring at the largest warship in the world through a scratched periscope. Pride makes men stupid. Desperation makes them reckless. The combination is lethal. 0417, the decision. Mendoza gave the order. Flood torpedo tube 1. Prepare to fire. The hydraulic system engaged. Seawater rushed into the forward torpedo compartment, equalizing pressure. The sound propagated outward through water at 1,500 meters per second, 4 times faster than sound through air. To Venezuelan ears, it sounded like preparation. To American sonar operators aboard the Mississippi, it sounded like a starting gun. Detection happened in under 5 seconds. The BQQ-10 sonar suite classified the acoustic transient in 15. A Virginia-class attack submarine running silent at 400 feet. Its own noise signature so minimal that oceanographers study its stealth characteristics. Its sensors so sensitive they could track individual fish schools. Weapon assignment took 30 seconds. Fire control solutions calculated for 2 Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes. Each one a technological masterpiece, fiber optic guidance, artificial intelligence-assisted targeting, 55-knot maximum speed, 650-pound high-explosive warhead, designed to crack open nuclear submarine pressure holes at depth. Against the Sábalo's 1970s steel construction, it would be like using a sledgehammer on an eggshell. Permission to engage was transmitted from Fleet Command via encrypted satellite communication. Response time, 40 seconds. The authority to sink a foreign submarine attacking an American carrier doesn't require lengthy deliberation. Safeties were removed. The American crew waited for exactly one thing, the final order to fire. By the time Captain Mendoza's finger approached the firing trigger, the Mississippi had locked his engine room from 2,000 yards. Close enough to hear his cooling pumps cycling. Close enough to count his propeller revolutions. Close enough that Mark 48 travel time would be measured in seconds, not minutes. The Venezuelan weapon told its own story. The SUT heavyweight torpedo, revolutionary in 1971. Wire-guided, 23-knot maximum speed, 260-kilogram warhead designed to crack Soviet cruiser hulls. Germany's answer to underwater warfare during the Cold War. Frozen in amber for half a century. 53 years later, it's a museum piece being operated by sailors who've never seen one work outside of grainy training films. The guidance wire connecting torpedo to submarine is copper, prone to snapping if the boat maneuvers aggressively. The weapon's terminal seeker uses active sonar technology from the Nixon administration. It can distinguish between a warship and empty ocean, but distinguishing between a carrier's hull and the complex thermal environment of the Caribbean thermocline requires processing power it simply doesn't have. American Mark 48 torpedoes travel at 55 knots. They use fiber optic guidance that doesn't snap. They operate independently with AI-assisted target tracking. They navigate thermal layers like fish through water. The technological gap isn't measured in years. It's measured in generations. But here's what matters. A 260-kilogram warhead detonating under a carrier's keel doesn't care about manufacturing dates. Obsolete doesn't mean harmless. Desperate doesn't mean incompetent. It means the men firing won't survive long enough to see if their weapon works. 0418, launch. Fuego! The SUT torpedo launched from Tube 1. Copper wire spooling behind it like a leash on a racing dog. 23 knots toward a target 18 miles away. 37 minutes to impact if nothing interfered. Everything was about to interfere. The American response was immediate and utterly devastating, not because of what they did, but because of what they chose not to do. No torpedoes fired. No depth charges dropped. No explosions ripping through dark water turning men into memories. Instead, the USS Mississippi did something far more psychologically destructive. It activated its active sonar at close range. One ping, loud enough to rattle teeth, loud enough to echo through every compartment of the Sábalo, loud enough that coffee cups vibrated off tables and sailors grabbed bulkheads for support, loud enough that every man aboard instantly understood one terrible truth: they were dead if America wanted them dead. That single ping transmitted more information than any diplomatic communique could ever convey. We see you. We've been tracking you for 6 days. We have weapons locked on your engine room. Your torpedo is in the water and we're letting it run because we know it won't hit anything. You're alive because we choose to let you live. Make your next decision carefully. Captain Mendoza understood instantly. His torpedo was still running, 34 minutes to potential impact. But his submarine had just been painted by a hunter he never detected. Somewhere behind him in the darkness, American torpedoes were aimed at his hull. He had maybe 90 seconds before they fired. Two choices: continue the attack and die, or abort and surface. Pride versus survival. National honor versus 64 lives. 0419, abort. Cut the wire. Emergency surface. Blow all ballast. High-pressure air screamed into ballast tanks. The Sábalo angled upward at 15 degrees. Men grabbed handholds as the deck tilted. The copper guidance wire snapped. Severed deliberately. The SUT Torpedo, suddenly blind, began its terminal search pattern. Circling. Seeking. Its outdated seeker couldn't distinguish the Ford's massive hull from the Caribbean's complex thermal layers. Its sonar painted empty water. Thermal gradients. Confused returns. After 11 minutes, it exhausted its fuel and sank. A $1, $2 million museum piece settling toward the seafloor to join the shrimp colonies and silt. 0422, surface. The Sábalo broke the surface like a corpse rising from deep water. Rusty. Dripping. Defeated. 64 Venezuelan sailors climbed onto the wet deck and stared at an empty horizon. No American ships visible. No aircraft overhead. Just blue water stretching to every compass point, and the humiliation of knowing they'd been watched the entire time. 3 miles away, invisible below the thermocline, the Mississippi maintained tracking. Its sonar recorded every sound of the Venezuelan crew's confused radio chatter. Its cameras photographed the surfaced submarine from periscope depth. Intelligence analysts would study those images for weeks, cataloging corrosion patterns, antenna configurations, every detail that might be useful in future encounters. The Ford Carrier Strike Group continued its operations unchanged. Flight operations resumed at 0445. Breakfast served at 0600. Another routine day protecting American interests in international waters. The cost analysis. Venezuela expended 1 SUT heavyweight torpedo. Retail value $1. $2 million. Operational deployment cost including fuel, crew salaries, and submarine maintenance, approximately $3. $4 million. Political cost, immeasurable. The world's press would never report this incident, but every naval intelligence service on the planet would analyze it. Russian analysts, Chinese observers, Iranian Naval Command, everyone watching to see how America handles submarine threats to carrier operations. The lesson broadcast clearly: detection, tracking, deterrence, all without firing a shot. America expended 1 active sonar ping. Approximate cost in electricity, $47. The Virginia-class submarine that ended the engagement never fired a weapon, never revealed its exact position, never risked a single sailor, never even accelerated beyond patrol speed. This is the mathematics that keeps defense analysts employed. A submarine costing $2, $8 billion to build and $60 million annually to operate neutralized a decades-old threat with a sound wave. But the real calculation isn't financial. It's strategic. Sinking the Sábalo would have created an international incident. 64 casualties requiring explanation. Diplomatic complications with every nation that sells weapons to Venezuela. Congressional hearings lasting months. UN Security Council debates. Potential escalation with unpredictable consequences. Most importantly, it would have given Caracas exactly what a failing regime craves: martyrs, international attention, a grievance to exploit for decades, proof that America is the aggressor, the bully, the imperial power that murders sailors in international waters. Letting them surface accomplished everything without the mess. The Venezuelan Navy was humiliated, their operational capabilities exposed as obsolete, their submarine force proven irrelevant against modern detection systems, their captain facing career-ending debriefings, their crew knowing they'd been outclassed by an enemy they never saw. And every other potential adversary received the same message carved in sonar pulses: we see you before you see us. We track you before you deploy. We'll give you one chance to make the smart choice. After that, the math changes permanently. Strategic implications. In Caracas, generals stared at intelligence reports and confronted an uncomfortable truth. Their entire naval doctrine was built on assumptions that died 30 years ago. Their submarines weren't invisible. American sensors tracked them from the moment they left port. Their torpedoes weren't unstoppable. American defenses could neutralize them without breaking stride. Their geography wasn't protection. The Caribbean belonged to whoever controlled information, and information belonged to America. Captain Mendoza returned to La Guaira facing an impossible debriefing. How do you explain to political leadership that you fired a torpedo at an American carrier and they didn't even bother to sink you? How do you convey that the enemy's mercy was more devastating than their weapons? The Sábalo would never leave port again, not because of mechanical failure, but because command lost confidence. The boat that survived became proof of obsolescence. This is how modern deterrence works when nobody's watching. Not with explosions, not with body counts, with a single ping that says everything words cannot. We know where you are. We know what you're planning. We could end you in seconds. We're choosing not to. Don't make us reconsider. The Caribbean doesn't forget. Somewhere in the deep, acoustic sensors still record every sound. Somewhere in Norfolk, analysts still track every submarine that thinks it's being clever. And somewhere in the silent depths, Virginia-class attack submarines patrol routes that foreign navies will never know about, won't ever detect, can't hope to counter. The USS Gerald R. Ford continued her deployment. Her crew filed reports, conducted maintenance, resumed normal operations. For them, this was Tuesday. A foreign submarine made a bad decision. American systems did their job. No drama, no headlines, no consequences. For Venezuela, it was the end of an era. The final proof that Cold War equipment cannot contest 21st century dominance. That desperation is not strategy. That firing first doesn't matter if the enemy already knew you were coming. If you found this breakdown valuable, share it with someone who needs to understand how modern naval warfare actually works, not the Hollywood version. The cold mathematical reality where detection equals deterrence and the loudest sound is often the one that prevents war rather than starts it.